And I'm so excited to have this conversation with her. And so before we do that, we usually go into the fun fact. And so a fun fact about Yemen this time is that Yemen hosts Shibam. It's a city of about 7,000 inhabitants in the district of Shibam. And this famous city is known for its ancient mud brick high-rising buildings. And about 500 houses occur in the city, with some being as high as 11 stories. These high-rise buildings date back to the 16th century. Thus, Shiban is often called the Manhattan of the desert. It was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1982, and it really, really looks beautiful when you see the pictures. And before we also start our conversation, we usually have a story from the people who share stories uh, but don't want to come on live to share it. And so, but this time, all of our participants, all who signed it, are going to be coming live. So that's great. And so I will share with you guys a little small story about what happened when my little brothers went to Yemen for their very first time. They were one Hassan and Hussein. They were there. I think one of them was 6 and one of them was 5, like 4.5, 5. And so it was like my dad preferred to stay in the village, and we were in the village. And Hassan and Hussein, they were fast our next door neighbors. They had like cows, sheep, goats, you name it, any kind of farm animal that you would find in Yemen. And my little brothers were fascinated by that. It's like they see it on TV. You know how like all these cartoons they watch as a baby, and like it's like moo. It was just like a real world to them. Like they thought they were an imagination place, but it was real world, and so they were fascinated. And so every day, everything they did revolved around like the dogs. I mean, the cows, the everything. It was like they centered their life around those farm animals. And one day, one day at 6 in the morning, while everyone was asleep, they kind of opened the door. Hassan was a bit taller, so he kind of took I don't know what it was, and he climbed on it to reach to the door to open it. And they left. They went to the next door neighbor's house, and where the place where they keep the next door neighbors were also asleep. And so you just so they had like the place that you keep the farm animals is different from where like your house where you live. It's like next to it, but it's not in the same space like the rooms. And so they went. It's only closed from the outside, and because it's safe, it's relatively safe there. And they went and opened them, and the cows and the sheep and every farm animal they had was open. Like they left, and so they were just my little brothers played for a bit with them, and they couldn't really control it. They didn't know what to do with them anymore. Like it was the cows were hungry, the sheep were hungry, and they went and ate everyone's grass. You know how like that's like blasphemy in Yemen.
Yeah.
You know, they went and they were in every hall or like and eating the grass and eating الزرع and eating هذيك المرة يعني وروحوا يرقدوا بعدين بعد ما
Yeah.
رقدوا and they couldn't really control it. روحوا يرقدوا بس يعني الناس كلهم قاموا من الصياح حق الناس الآخرين ليش
Oh
البقر
my God.
and they're like من أكل السعر من تسفك الدبش بعد حقكم البقر والكساب and it was just like فوضى حصل بالقرية and it was all Hassan and
Yes.
Hussein.
Oh my goodness. They're gonna be like the American kids. Of course, it's the American kids.
Yeah, but yeah, that was their first experience in Yemen, and it was
Yeah.
really funny. So now let's proceed to our great guest, Reem. I'm so excited to have you on here, and I
You're
really,
so
really
sweet.
appreciate making it time for it. So tell us how, like, I know you told me that last time you went to Yemen was in last year.
2018.
Yeah. Oh,
2018. Yeah.
2018. Awesome. Like, can you tell us like the first time you went to Yemen, and then tell us like how is your last experience as well?
Yeah, of course. So I've been there a couple times before 2018. Um, I was a little younger, so I think the first time I went, I was 12. Um, I don't remember much from that trip. I just remember, actually, I remember Eid and how lively it was in the Haya, um, in the city, or in the city and in the streets and in the bazaars. You know, we would call them souks, but in English it'd be a bazaar. So it was really cool as a kid at 12 because like here Christmas is so, you know, everything's decorated, you get in that Christmas spirit, but being in a Muslim country, even though it's not like as developed as other Muslim countries, it was so cool. It's just like, you know, after football we would go shopping and we would spend hours outside shopping and picking out our Eid kiswa and our candy and the haya in the streets. There's so many people and it was just, that was amazing. So that was my 12 when I was 12. And then this year, recently, I went and we also got to celebrate Eid, but it was a little different, obviously, with the current state and being an adult now. And I wasn't like, you know, females aren't able to be out late where we were, at least. It was there was a little bit more restriction, but
Yeah.
still having that family, you know, like there's just being able to, you know, spend breakfast with one uncle and then dinner at one uncle's house and just walking and having that freedom in the village of just going in between houses and talking to people. Um, yeah, so I think those are like the two like main things that stuck with me from both trips.
Oh my God, yes. Like, wallah, you're just every time you're speaking, you're reminding me of like my experience in Yemen, and I love like Ramadan, and like
Yeah.
it's because of those things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like the life after like night life. That's it. It's like no one does anything in the morning anymore.
Yeah.
You know, in the afternoon, and it's like you get more privacy at night and just like mushhamat, like the heat. It's
Yeah.
yeah, and I'm so glad that you got to experience that.
Yeah, it was really nice, and there was definitely a fear going, mostly at 2018, you know, with the cholera epidemic just obviously the war and the famine and not to ignore all of that because it's definitely there. You know, it's definitely visible. Like our people are hurting, but the beauty of it was being with the family and the culture and like the adhan would go off from 5 different masajid and you just felt so like at home, you know. And then there was definitely like a few weeks of adjustment of like discomfort, you know. But once you fully immerse yourself in it, it's definitely an experience that I highly recommend.
Oh yeah. The Qammel part. That would be my worst favorite part about going to Yemen or like the village. Is
Uh,
specifically like I would have to like put
yeah,
body 10 times a day, but everything else kind of like on the it suppresses it, so
yeah,
it's fine. Like, so do you still have like family there? Is it your extended family or immediate family or?
yeah. So we have my dad's side is predominantly there, like his sisters and brother. Um, my uncle actually came here, but wasn't as comfortable, so he decided to go back home. Rightfully so. He's in the older ages, so. But yeah, on my dad's side is still there for sure. But we have, I think, one of my uncles is here now. So yeah,
Oh, awesome. Yeah, like we always tend to have like someone back home that
yeah,
it's that keeps that link between both countries.
100%.
Yeah. And like, do you have a culture shock? And like, would you mind sharing one or two when you went to Yemen, or was it just what you expected?
Okay, yeah, this is good. So where I'm from in America, we call it Little Yemen. So I'm surrounded by Yemenis. So growing up, the culture was so embedded in us.
Yeah.
Um, so going back to Yemen, I think the expectations of what they thought an American girl would be like um, was more of, I think that was my culture shock of what their expectations of what I was. Like I wouldn't know how to do things or the different foods, and it was kind of silly, but I think that was one big thing. And then another big culture shock, I think going back to the famine, like we do see it on the TV. And I remember as we were getting ready to go to Yemen, people were like, don't worry, like you're not going to see that. But the reality is, like, we have a house in the village, but we had a house in the city, like in Rada. So when we were in Rada, you definitely saw it, you know? Like I think that if it wasn't more of a culture shock, it was just more of like a punch in the gut kind of feeling of like my people are hurting. And it just feels like the world isn't giving it the attention that they would have elsewhere, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. It's definitely true. And I feel like, generally speaking, when you go back to Yemen, like people think they have this perception of you and you kind of like betray it. And yeah, it's interesting. So
Yeah.
it's I feel like one of the weirdest questions someone asked is like, so do you pray there? Like, is it, I'm like, there's a God there still, you know?
Yeah.
And stuff like that.
That's so, yeah,
Yeah.
people, their questions get really weird.
No,
Your perceptions are so off.
yeah. Like, so now that you're telling me that you kind of grew up surrounded by Yemenis and stuff, so you didn't really have a language barrier, or
No, yeah, I grew up with, yeah, like Arabi, but then that Yemeni Arabi around me, so that
yeah,
language barrier was fine. Yeah.
yeah. And so, what was your like? What was something your favorite experience that you would like to all of us to know, or like the audience to know about your experience in
Yeah.
Yemen?
Um, okay, I think the coolest thing about it, so both my parents grew up in Yemen. So I
Mhm.
think going and my parents like being able to show me where they played and where they went to school. We like at like right after Salat al-Fajr, my dad was like, "Come, like we're gonna go around the village," and it was amazing. So we would go. He showed me the playground he played soccer at, all the houses he would visit on his way, like where he would go to school, and I think it was so important for me to understand and like being embedded like or like going and seeing how my parents grew up like just like a peek. I mean, I never I'm going to fully understand their struggles, but it gave me a greater appreciation um, for how much they've done to get me to the place I am today. But I think that day specifically of just being able to go around the Geria and see everything was really special. And my grandfather on my mom's side, he has a garden for the Geria, and I've always heard stories about it. And I remember going when I was 12, but not remembering much. So when I was there, I got to go explore, and it's just this beautiful land with apple trees and grape trees and like cactus fruit. So like everything, and it just felt like a little secret garden. It was like I think those two really were the top tier moments of the whole trip.
Just like seeing you talk about it and the love that is there, and I can feel it. I like it's so contagious,
Yeah.
and I'm just so happy that you had that like amazing experience, and like you kind of like, yeah, I get it, because like you would hear stories, but now you actually like you have a better kind of understanding, and the more you grow, the more you value those like small things that matter so much to you. And
Exactly.
yeah, thank you for sharing that. And
So
yeah, what was your like craziest moments? Like if you're comfortable sharing, of course.
yeah, let's see. I think this could go two ways. I think there's a spectrum of crazy in Yemen, you know? I think it's not as crazy, it's more of an interest. Um, so right before I went to Yemen, I did a whole research study on cholera and the epidemic, I not knowing we were going to go to Yemen. So then Yemen is obviously dealing with the cholera epidemic, and then having neighbors have cholera and being able to uh, like communicate what they need and like helping out. That was really cool. And that's like a little crazy, but like on the opposite side. But I think people expect like crazy, like really random stories. Um, I got really sick 2 weeks before I was coming back home, and like awful sick. Like it was so bad, and I was in the clinic, and like they were running IVs. I felt awful. Like I wasn't even able to walk by myself, and they were running out of bed space. So they had a lady come sit in the same like bed, like medical bed as me, and which was fine. But then her question, like she was like, "Oh, where are you from?" I said here, like I said da, and my aunt like said something to me, and I responded like she could tell that I wasn't, you know, Florida from da, and she was just like, "As I am sick in pain. So are you single?" And I'm like, "Ma'am, I am dying." Okay, I am. I don't know if that helps you answer the question, but I was literally like in awe, and I was just like, "Are you kidding me? Like I am obviously so out of it, and I'm IVs running, pumping through me, like it was so bad. Like I didn't even want. I would save you the details of how sick I was." And she sees me. "Are you single?" I'm like, "What, ma'am? No, stop." But yeah, I think that's the opposite crazy.
Like she wants to have a notebook kind of moment, you know? Like,
Yeah.
what if you get better?
So
She doesn't want to take any risks.
it was funny because she's like, you tell me what kind of guy you want, as long as you take like, you know, help him. And I'm like, okay, we'll talk later, maybe.
That's yeah, that's Yemen.
Yeah, exactly. The beauty of our people.
Okay. Like, do you have another like funny experience that you wanna share?
Yeah, okay, so going back to how important like livestock and just food is. It's like it's scarce. So my brother, bless his soul, so I don't even know how to explain this, but when you take the milk from the cow and you زرعوا اللبن, so they basically are like shaking it to get butter out of the milk. Okay. So it's a long process. It takes like up to an hour minimum. It could go up to like 2 hours maybe. So my brother insisted that he wanted to try this because it looks easy, but you get tired, and these people are obviously professional at this. And the whole milk supply just gone. Like, I don't know how he flipped it, and the milk, mind you, my family, my dad's side of the family, they would do it for like 3, 4 families. It wasn't just for us. So all the kids started coming because they wanted their, you know, their share. And we have the chickens like just walking in that milk, and like all the animals, and like how do you explain that other than like, oh, he's an American, you know, like they'll just give him that pass. But I think that was pretty silly because it was hard to explain it. But I mean the chickens enjoyed it for the most part, so at least somebody got something out of it.
Oh my God, I love doing that. That's one of my favorite parts when going to my aunt's house. It's like I call it's dibs. That's
Yeah.
it. It's so cool, and you're like, I don't know, it gives you that sense of like, I got this, I can survive.
Yeah, I made this butter for breakfast. That was me.
Well, like, I'll make you food, guys. This is the
I don't know when
way.
the last time you went was and how much you remember, but at going back to that same house, it was on top of a hill, so the sky in Yemen, because there's obviously not as much light pollution, but if you ever, I don't know, get a chance to go back, if you're able to sit on the rooftop and just look up, you see the galaxy. Like it's covered in stars. It's the most breathtaking. Like it's so beautiful.
I think like we do this too, like, and when we go to the village, my dad prefers the village just because of like nature, the surrounding. We're so isolated from people, and just like it's really beautiful. And like we would have like breakfast on the roof,
Yeah.
and like at night during Ramadan, like even if it's not during Ramadan, but like the moon is there. Oh my
Yes, so
God,
beautiful.
it's like, and you just sit there and like the breeze, and it's.
And you're always at a higher altitude, so you always feel like you could touch the sky, like you're so close.
And there's people like there's houses like below you, especially if you're like on the mountaintop. It's really, really beautiful. I feel like words don't do it justice, you know?
Yeah, no,
Yeah. So what was your biggest takeaway from your trips, or like what you learned from Yemen, or like a common theme, or
Yeah, this is a great question, Kofed. So I studied public health for my undergrad with a focus in the sciences, but I think going to Yemen really emphasized how important public health is, you know? And I think to say that although like I can't emphasize enough how important being educated in what's going on in Yemen is and how ignorant the world has become to that country. And although there was famine and disease outbreaks and people were living by the hour, you know, like who knows if they had lunch and dinner, but they were just so mutahammadin. I think that's the common thing that really, subhanAllah, stuck with me is that like you could walk past someone and they still had like shukr in them, or they had that like piece of like God is going to take care of us, you know, like lahal hamd. And I think a part of it with me was struggling with, I think there was a frustration going in where I saw everyone struggling and me not being, or obviously not being able to help everyone, right? But when you are able to see the appreciation that people have, even for the simplest things, you realize that, you know, Rabbi really only tests those he knows can handle it. You know, these families didn't know if they would have food on the table, but they were so mutahammadin. So I think the common theme is like the hospitality of Yemenis really stuck out. And I think that's a little bias, of course, but the hospitality and the gratefulness. So I think those are the two common themes that through my whole trip were like consistently highlighted.
I definitely agree with you. I feel like it's just, even during war, like you would have families, like even if they're suffering themselves, they're still going to take in their extended family who have been displaced. And it's like 15 people can live in a one bedroom, and they'll be like النفس في القلوب, النفس. And it's like you guys are just, it's really like it's like we بناكل كلنا سوا بنشرب سوا, هي لقمة عيش, هي يعني it's so simple. They're so simple. They're not materialistic. They make of what they have to survive. That's what it is.
Yeah. There were kids playing, I think at my first week there when I was still adjusting. So there was a big shock still going in. And I saw kids playing with wire and like a water bottle. But they were so happy, you know? Like I think that sometimes we feel like we feel bad when they don't even like it doesn't faze them. Like we're happy. Like we're doing fine. But I think that's where it falls back on the amana of us that are here in the khutbah and like studying, and that we make sure that no matter what field we go into, that our people are always in mind, you know, like we can do better, and you know, like it's feasible and we will, inshallah. But just keeping our people in mind with everything that we do is so important.
Wallahi, like thank you so much for it. Just you really expressed my thoughts, like I beautifully. Your stories, they really resonated with me, and I'm sure they resonated with so many others. You're so genuine, so sweet, and I thank you like so much for coming on here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, and any last thoughts that you would like to share with the audience?
I think just keep Yemen in mind, keep Yemeni people in your prayers, but also keep, you know, the Middle East. And there's so many countries going through so much, but I think as long as we educate ourselves and keep ourselves informed, they can't take any, like, you know, education is power. So as long as we're educated in what's going on, we could fight the battle. So just stay educated, stay informed, stay up to date, and stay safe. I think that's a good place. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you, Reem, once again. You are an amazing guest, and I'm so grateful you shared your stories with us. Take care, everyone. Alaikum assalam.
Bye.